everyone, let's wrap up January. And I'm sorry this will take a little bit longer because I have a lot to say this month. First off, let's start with videos I didn't film. The 11th of January marks my BookTube anniversary. 7 years ago I started making videos about books because I wanted to talk about books. And I still love doing it. I still love talking to you guys about books and everything else I come up with. I love that you share an interest in my life and that you always love to discuss with me and stick around. And I really enjoy that. Another thing that also happened on YouTube in January is that YouTube changes their partner program. So I am one of those who is lacking 1,000 hours of watch time for the last 365 days. So my channel will lose a partner status, and that basically means, as far as I understand, that there will be no more ads in front of my videos, which basically means I don't make roughly €100 a year. So not a big deal. I'm not demotivated to make videos. I will continue as I always have. There are other issues I have with YouTube that make it harder for my channel to grow, so nothing to worry about. You're here, you're watching, so you're great. So let's talk about videos I actually filmed this month, and we had a lot of great discussions. We talked about my current TBR, and you told me your TBR statuses, and as usual, I loved hearing about your TBR. I also uploaded my self-image for 2018. Unfortunately, I screwed up something there, so a lot of you might not have gotten the notification, so this is your chance to still watch it, and everybody who did, thank you for your comment. Then we had two more discussions. One was about the perfect moment of time to get out of bed, and I loved hearing about your sleeping habits and when you get up and what really ruins your day, and I loved that. The other discussion we had was about audiobooks and counting them, and it was super interesting how you count your audiobooks. A lot of you just count them as normal books, even on Goodreads, and not a lot of people were bothered with the minutes like I was. And I really loved how a lot of you mentioned that it doesn't matter if I count the double speed or half time or whatever, because if I read a page, I don't count how long it takes me to read anyways. And that was such an interesting idea, that technically counting pages even is irrelevant as well, because it doesn't give you information about how long it took you to read them, and comparing that is even harder, because being a slow reader, it's hard to compare my reading pages to a fast reader. And all of that was so interesting. Loved the discussion. Thank you very much. Also, thanks for watching my letter to January as well. So now let's get into the books. I finished 9 things. Let's do them by format. I read All Families Are Psychotic by Douglas Coupland. This was my first Douglas Coupland book. I really loved the writing, the crazy ideas of the family. There's a full review up for this, so let's not talk a lot about it here. But I can genuinely recommend it as a startup to read about super crazy characters. Reading the next book took me a little bit longer. The Garden of Evening Mist by Tan Thuong Eng is a very beautiful story, but you have to get into it. The writing really didn't ring well with me, despite being very beautiful and resembling the garden it talks about. I have a full review up for this book as well. It really does get better, and once you get into the characters. I also loved about this book that I really learned a lot about Malaysia. The next physical book I finished was not a success. La Divine is a story that I read in German. It was originally written in French, and the writing is just horrible. The story, I don't understand where the plot wants to go. Full review up for this one as well. There is a lot of secrecy in the book, but it's unnecessary. The writing keeps you at bay, but you don't really know why, because it's first-person personal narration a lot of times. And at the end, I really don't know. Cannot recommend it. The last physical book for the month is The Well of Lost Plots, the third book in the Thursday Next series. And I'm technically not finished, but I'm still counting it for January because I'm giving up on the series. I still like the idea and the writing, but I lost all interest in the characters and I'm just not invested in the story anymore. So finishing this, I will finish the series as well. Moving on to ebooks, I read Romancing the Werewolf by Gail Carriger, which is a companion novella to her Parasol Protectorate series, and technically, I do not recommend reading it unless you have read the Parasol Protectorate series and also the Castor Protocol series, because there will be spoilers in this book for the series. But if you've read them, this is just a fun romance story. The last ebook I read this month was The Night Masquerade, which is the third book in the Binti trilogy. I uploaded a video talking about the whole series. I really enjoyed the third installment of the series a lot more than the second. So we get to learn more about what is actually going on. We are a lot more invested in Binti and her character and the story that is happening. So I was a lot less frustrated with this one, and overall I can recommend the series. The last 3 books I finished were on audio. I listened to Shattered, which is the 7th book in the Iron Druid series, and it was a lot more fun again than the 6th installment of the series, and I really enjoyed the new character that we got introduced to. Not giving you more information because spoilers of the series. I also listened to Servants of the Storm, the 6th book in the Pillars of Reality series, and I did find it a little bit too long. It did feel like a filler book. There was some information that we needed, but it stretched out too much. I'm not really sure if we needed this book. There's only 1 more book in the series, so I'm actually looking forward to finishing it. And I also finally listened to Welcome to Night Vale, the companion novel to the podcast, and I have been enjoying the podcast for years, but this novel, I was wondering the whole time if it's just for fans of the series, because I cannot imagine that anyone who hasn't listened to the podcast will enjoy the novel. It doesn't feel like a standalone. It feels like you need a lot of background information of Night Vale and the things that are going on, and it is nicely done. I listened to the audiobook and it was fun to listen to it, but I often felt it would have been better in like a double episode of the podcast instead of a full novel. I'm not really sure. If you have read the novel but are not listening to the podcast, I would love to hear if you actually enjoyed it or if you thought, what is going on? And that's been my January. As usual, I'm always curious to hear about your January, so tell me in comments. And before we go, let's look at the end screen. As you can see, new year, new background color, and also I'm tracking formats, pages, and minutes again this year. This is only for just this month. The books to date will add up all the books I read throughout the year, and the TBR counting has changed a little bit. This year I am tracking all the books I own, including physical, ebooks, and audiobooks. So currently I have 40 unread books in my TBR that I plan on reading this year. And if I add new books, I will add them to the TBR. So let's see how that changes this year. Thank you all for watching, and let's go for February. Bye bye.